Before we begin our forum, we would like to take this opportunity to say a few words in memory of a former board member, Francis Romero, who recently passed away. Francis Romero was a former North Torrance Neighborhood Association board member who gave 20-plus years of volunteer service. In her position as director at large, Francis handled the telephone tree committee. This involved the distribution of individual membership calling lists along with a script for upcoming general meetings and membership expiration reminders to the committee members. She was also very supportive in the recruitment of new members, especially those neighbors that she knew in the Northeast area. In addition, she also contributed very informative newsletter articles that were very beneficial for our community. Francis also served as second vice president for our board from 2010 to 2014, which involved serving as membership chairperson. Her contributions were many. However, the introduction of her daughter, Mary Ann, to our board was invaluable. Mary Ann has been such an asset to our board by being our illustrious president for the last 8 years. Francis had an unwavering loyalty as a board member that exemplified her strong moral fiber and character. Her dedication and commitment to excellence enabled her to fulfill the duties of the position she served in an efficient manner. In addition to serving on the North Torrance Neighborhood Association, she was a longtime parishioner and volunteer at St. Catherine Labouré Church. Francis will always be remembered for her kind and caring way and her dedication and contributions to the North Torrance Neighborhood Association and the community. Our sincere condolences to Mary Ann Hamada and her family. Okay, we will now begin. We're going to start with a 3-minute statement, and Mayor Chen, you can go first.
Okay, I want to explain the timer.
Testing.
Yeah, the way the timer will work, we'll start off with the 3 minutes. When you have, when you have 20 seconds left on all questions and your opening and closing statements, 20 seconds, the timer will turn yellow. 5 seconds left, it'll turn red. When the whole screen turns red, your time is up. Any questions?
Only way I'm talking, Rick.
Okay, Mayor Chen, you can begin.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, North Torrance Homeowners Association, for hosting this event. And good evening. I'm just going to read the impartial analysis of Measure TC, which every one of us can find from the city clerk's website. Originally enacted in 1947, the Torrance City Charter last underwent a comprehensive update in 1973. Over the past year, the City Council of the City of Torrance has conducted at least 4 public meetings to discuss potential changes to the city charter. On July 16, 2024, the Torrance City Council voted to place a measure on November 5th, 2024 ballot for local voters to consider a number of proposed amendments. Measure TC will not increase taxes. Below is an impartial analysis of the primary amendments to the Torrance City Charter that would be adopted if a majority of the local voters approve Measure TC, which would provide for transparency and require the City Council and all city boards, commissions, and committees to act in a manner that promotes public participation, increase public disclosure obligations for lobbyists and campaign finances, restrict the use of official influence for partisan, political, or financial gain, including revolving door constraints on former city officials and anti-nepotism restrictions for current city officials to appoint relatives to salary council positions, city positions, establish a regular ethics training requirement for certain city officials, modify the terms and conditions of employment, appointment, and removal of the city manager and the city attorney, and specifically make both positions at-will employees that serve at the pleasure of the city council. Remove certain residency requirements for appointed officers, list the modern duties of the city clerk, clarify the role of the independent auditor and audit, define a minimum wage compensation structure for council members, outline the process for making claims for damages and commencing actions against the city, detail the city council's power to create, combine, suspend, or eliminate advisory boards, committees, or commissions, and remove and fill vacancies on majority vote. Provide for the continuance of certain existing items, including existing boards, committees, and commissions. Collect and expand on the general provisions and definitions of Article 1. Eliminate dated references to the Board of Education, now the independent Torrance and Levi School District, the Airport Fund, and the miscellaneous provision under Article 12. And that's fine.
Thank you. We agree our city charter needs an upgrade. Unfortunately, Measure TC is badly flawed. Important protections for Torrance residents, businesses, and taxpayers are deleted, and we think it tries to do too much in one measure. New regulations on citizens are added, and restraints on what the government can do are removed. America's system of government is of, by, and for the people. We are ostensibly a constitutional republic that protects individual rights, free speech, and representative democracy. Everyone is supposed to have a voice, an opportunity to influence how our government operates. The reality of Measure TC is less inspiring. When the charter hearings were held, there was little opportunity to ask questions and receive answers within the 1-minute time limit imposed by the council. At least 2 of the 3 mandatory meetings did not consider the charter revisions until well after 11 p.m., and that tells you how important citizen input was. Measure TC, as it now stands, empowers an unelected administrative state. It empowers one-person rule with fewer checks and balances, with far-reaching consequences. Yes, our city puts out colorful brochures, improved websites, catchy bumper stickers, and even new city boundary signs. But those shiny objects are just distractions. Council agendas are so large that even experienced council members struggle to get through them to understand what is happening and often don't. Because the city council doesn't meet weekly, the meetings often go past midnight into the wee hours of the morning. The results are devastating. Did you know, for instance, that the city council recently passed an ordinance that would eventually result in the entire city of Torrance coming under a Mello-Roos Community Facilities District? Evidently, they don't understand its destructive nature. When it was considered, there was little discussion because they thought they had protected single-family homes. But once the courts are done, we'll all be paying. That was before the council voted to stop funding the Christmas Lights Festival in Sleepy Hollow. Why? The city can't afford it. Better yet, there are more important things to fund than the annual Christmas light show. Torrance citizens can never hope to control our municipal government with a charter that creates an autonomous, unruly creature that tells us what to do. It should be the other way around. The sad truth is that all governments work for themselves, enrich themselves, empower themselves, and do nothing but grow and consume ever more taxes. That is why we have charters and constitutions, to limit their power and reach. The government must be controlled for Torrance residents to keep their freedom. We're here tonight with one message. Don't lose your voice in government. Reject Measure TC and demand a citizen commission to draft a new charter. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with the first question, and you'll have 2 minutes, starting with Mayor Chen. The city of Torrance has had a charter since 1947 that has served us well. Why do we need this charter amendment?
Thank you for the question. As a matter of fact, I'll roll back the time clock for you a little bit. We actually had a process of updating the charter going into the March 2020 election, if you all remember. And the city council at that time chose to only put a few measures on the March 2020 election, which talked about extending the period of time from 30 days to 60 days for a vacant council seat. And we had put the city clerk and city treasurer up to for election, whether it be appointed or it would be elected position. And we had this Measure X, which is to consider raising the sales tax if the LA County decided to raise sales tax. We would have a blocking mechanism. And we were actually going to have the rest of the entire charter amendment to be up for the November 2020 election. So actually, that was already in the making back in 2020, and COVID hit us. And so it got pushed back, and then this is the next opportunity. So as was stated earlier in my opening statement, the city charter has not been had a major revision since 1973, and this is our opportunity to update the city charter, and the city council decided to take this opportunity to bring it up to the people. And just to clarify a few things, that there is nothing being taken away from the residents of the city of Torrance. We're having this community meeting tonight. We have more than 4 public meetings about the charter amendment. We have people who wrote in an email giving us their comments, and we all read those comments. And we deliberated and discussed these charter amendments in public. And there's not a one-person rule. So I just want to leave that.
Mr. Marshall?
Why do we need this amendment? I think I agree that we haven't updated the city charter in 50 years. It's probably time to do something. As I said in the opening statement, there are, we think it's doing too much. Yeah, we would have liked to have seen something like a consent, like the consent calendar, where the things that aren't controversial would be considered an amendment as separate, and the things that are a little controversial would be considered separately. Now, I understand that costs money, but democracy is expensive. It costs money. And I think it's okay to spend money on the citizens, especially when we're trying to figure out what kind of government we want. And that's why it does need to be updated. Unfortunately, I think some of the updates went a little too far, and maybe my characterizations aren't what everybody likes to hear, but I encourage you to take a look at this yourself. The city has put things out on the website. If you go to the home page, you can, it eventually scrolls up and you can go and you can read the city agenda items, which I did as well. But and read through for yourself. There's lots there. Lots have changed. And for instance, I do like the fact that we were trying to get the city attorney and the city manager as at-will employees and out of the civil service system. What I don't like is that we didn't, as far as I can tell, it's all going to be contractual. We have no idea. I know the current lets it be in perpetuity. I don't know if we'd have a 5-year contract or something like that. There's a lot of things that I would have wanted to see discussed that really didn't have a chance to be discussed. I can't always stay up late, and I know I'm impressed that the council does it week after, well, at least 2 times a month, but I'd have to take a nap in the afternoon if I was on the council. So it does need to be updated. We do need an amendment. I just think we're going too far. Thank you.
Okay, next question. We're going to start with Mr. Marshall on this one. What public input was received in creating the new charter amendment?
Well, you heard the mayor. They did receive public input. There was a chance to have some public input. The thing that bothers me is that the public has the input first. We have no idea what the council's thinking, where they're going, or anything like that. And then we hear from them, and we want to come back and say, hey, we want to offer this. We don't have that opportunity. For many years, we always had the council ask the city staff of various things and get things out in the open, and we had a chance to hear that, and then we back to that. I'd like to go back to that, but I don't know. COVID has changed it. I don't know if Black Lives Matter has changed it, but there's things that have changed that I don't think has helped us for the better. And I'm going to yield the balance of my time.
Okay, Mayor Chen.
So I get an extra minute now? Actually, the public has always had the opportunity to provide public comments. Yeah, we had, like I shared earlier, even since going up to the election in 2020, the public produced comments. When we started this process again this year, we actually picked up where we left off in 2020. So these are not new items, and the public has always had the opportunity. Even my friend here sitting to my left here has opportunity to come, make a phone call, talk to me in my office, and try to get understanding. So we've always had public comments, so we still welcome it. is that we watch, the lot of the council process, and we're not talking about city council process here, because that's a little different thing. But in terms of public comments, we've had at least 4 sessions, and probably even more, because, we started early in 2020, and when we picked it up, we talked about every single item, and every single item in this charter amendment, when we discussed it in council, the council together elected on every single item to see if we're going to put these items in the charter. So we actually picked them one by one and voted before we decided to put them into the charter amendment. It seems like a lot, but if you look at it in detail, it makes a lot of sense. For those of you who don't have the material, I have the budget book here. I have all the council meeting staff reports here. Yes, it is a lot of work we have to do, but it's no different than we did back when I was a councilman, when we had meetings every week. A lot of times a meeting gets a little longer. It's because the city council actually goes back to closed session. And so you actually don't know, a lot of time we go back to closed session for another 2 hours and to finish up the meeting. But we're willing to work hard for the people, and we're always here to listen to your comments. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Explain what the mayor and council's total compensation package is as of today. And we're going to start with Mayor Chen.
In terms of total compensation, I'm going to do the best I can. I have a spreadsheet here, and the total monthly pay is $100 per month. So, and then we have travel allowance, roughly $976 a month, and medical insurance, depending on if you take it or not. If you don't, you get $400 back. If you have a family of 4 or 2, it could be different because the city has a certain stipend level. And the day here, the total compensation, if you add everything together, salary and benefits and car allowance, it's roughly $32,000. And that's, I think that's what you're asking. And just to share with you, so a personal story, the city has updated our accounting methods. We used to get a check every week for our car allowance. So the city put all that together into one payroll, so that with all your deductions put together, pay, insurance, and what the premiums covered. So for about 18 months, when I was serving on the city council, I actually wrote a check to the city every month because all of that did not cover everything. So I was actually paying the city serving as a councilman. So that's just a little data point. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Marshall?
First of all, let me say I agree that the council is underpaid. I think the fact that they get car allowance and so forth is necessary. I also know they have to do a lot of public appearances, and that costs money as well. So I think we need to upgrade their salary. I'm just not sure I go along with the way they chose to do it. Back when our charter was first put together, and the council wage was $100 a month. The minimum wage was $1 an hour. It's now $16 an hour, and I have no problem with just tying it to the minimum wage. I just was surprised that we tied it to 160 hours of work a month. There is some prestige in being on the council. There is some sort of contribution give back to the city, which I think we need to have. And as I think my councilwoman Kalani had mentioned, that it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000 when we do this, and that will pay for another police officer. I believe in compensating people for their work, and that's what we need to do as this council. So I am in favor of a pay increase. I'm just not sure that what was proposed is the way we should go, because if the voters pass, I forget what proposition it is, the minimum wage will go up to $18 an hour. If we pass this, it'll be tied to the minimum wage, and so it'll actually be more than what's mentioned right now. I'm not opposed to having it tied to the minimum wage. I'm just opposed to having it multiplied by 160 hours a month. Thank you.
Okay, next question. If this amendment passes, what would the total compensation for the mayor and council be, including pension? And we'll start with Mr. Marshall.
I didn't realize I was going to have to answer budget questions. I should have boned up on that. I think you get a chance to be on CalPERS. I'm not sure when you're on the council, but it's not very much because they don't make very much. As you heard, there's health care if you decide to take it. There's also car allowance and other things that are available to them. Again, I don't want to be on record that I think the council is overpaid. I don't think they are. I do think that if it passes, that we'll get by with it as a city. I just think that I would like to stick more historical with what we've done before, where we were $100 for the longest time, which we let it go too long because I guess other councils were too scared to try this. I commend this council for being willing to put something out there and have us as a city discuss it. And I would like to see us as a city decide what is fair compensation for our council members. They work hard. They're at a lot of places. They spend a lot of their personal time doing things for the city. And we as a city, I think, should be grateful for what they're doing and compensate them fairly. We shouldn't ask them to work for free. And at $100 a month, that's what we're doing right now. And they're putting, if they were only putting in a few hours a month, I wouldn't worry about it. But they're putting in much more than that, and we need to fairly compensate them.
Mayor Chen?
I think my previous response gave you the total compensation package. I think the CalPERS, it all depends on when you decide to retire, and depending on the percentage, your age and what the percentage is and what you're making at the time. As I shared earlier, even back in March 2020, I think I was probably the low councilman that wanted to put the compensation even in the March election, even though I was up for election, because it wasn't because I thought it was the right thing to do, and it didn't matter if it's gonna, cause some people to raise their eyebrow. But the compensation of the mayor and council has not been adjusted in the last 68 years. And we hear about, different employee unions and employees in the city, and some people say we're not employees of the city, we're elected. But in one sense, we actually are employees of the city. We are elected employees of the city, and we work very hard. When we looked at the salary survey, your highest ranking members are your elected officials in the city of Torrance, and our hourly pay was 58 cents an hour. And if you believe that's the way it should be, I would say vote no on TC. But I know how much time and effort each of our colleagues do for the city. And even some of us, we continue to serve when we are still paying the city on a monthly basis. The $16 an hour and then calculating it was just a method so that in the future, there is a method for the compensation. It prevents hardship for younger people who want to get in office from committing time to serve and do the homework prior to the council meeting and meet all other obligations.
Okay, next question. Why should Torrance residents increase the compensation for mayor and council by approximately 2,700%? We'll start with Mayor Chen.
I briefly stated earlier, so I think I will continue then. If you haven't now adjusted a compensation for roughly 68 years, no matter what adjustment, it's going to be high. This took a long time for us to get here, and this council has the courage to put it before the people. And this is one of those, when you talk about compensation, it's like when we are negotiating with each of our city employees. We're not really, we appreciate every city employee. This compensation has nothing to do with the ability to hire a police officer. We just approved a $4.6 million incentive for our police officers. That was due to vacancies. I talked to former finance department head Eric Tsao when we were talking about compensation back in 2020. And I said, how does that affect our budget? And he said, Councilman Chen, it's in the noise. We don't even see it. So what we're trying to do is, we're not even trying to get up to date to 2024. The city council is just trying to get it to a rate so that it's calculable. There's a method for adjustment, so you don't have to wait for another charter amendment. And this is not high salary. This is our budget at my State of the City was $550 million. The total percentage of $550 million is 0.08%. This is really in the noise for the work we do. For the future elected, it allows folks that are younger to have the opportunity to serve without creating undue hardship. It does not provide a living. I will guarantee you that.
Mr. Marshall.
I'm going to agree with the mayor on most of this. I just think that I guess I'm too wedded to the thing of just trying to stay with historical past where we started out at $100 and the minimum wage was $1 an hour, and that was a monthly salary. I just think we should have, I'm fine with tying it to the minimum wage. I don't know that we need to tie it to a number of hours because, you know, if a council person wants to put in more or put in less, we really can't know what they're doing. And just having a monthly salary lets us know what it is for council. And I want to say that I agree that the council is underpaid and that they should be paid more. And I commend them for putting this on the ballot. I would have liked to have seen it as a separate item, but again, that would have cost more money. I just know that we as a city need to grapple with this, and this amendment gives us an opportunity to grapple with it. What do we think our council people are worth? I don't want to say because I'm saying it should be less than what they're proposing that I think they're worth less. I don't think they are. I do think that they should be compensated. It's just that I want to keep some historical perspective on what we do as a city. Torrance has always been a city that when I moved here, we were low in a lot of different things, and we always compare ourselves to other cities. I don't mind that as long as we're on the low end of costs, as long as we're on those kind of things. And I've wanted to, that's why I live here, because I think it's a great place to live, and we keep our taxes low and things like that, and we have discussions. And I appreciate what happens here, appreciate the council, appreciate them having the courage to do this and put it on there and giving us an opportunity to discuss it and figure out what we're going to do as a city. Thank you.
Okay, next question. If the charter amendment passes, the city manager and city attorney will be at will contracted employees. Why is it necessary to change this in the charter? We'll start with Mr. Marshall.
The current city treasurer, the current city attorney and the current city manager will not be at will employees. It will be the ones that come after them. I'm sure these are employee things that can't be all discussed here, but this, I agree that we should, and that's what I like about it, we should put at-will employees of those two positions in there. It makes it easier to decide whether we keep them or not. What we have is a situation where in the current charter, it's in perpetuity, and then the council has to take some drastic action on that. I agree that if you have an at-will employee and you have a contract for a particular period of time, that's probably the best way to go. And when you have that contract come up, it should come up to where new council people get an opportunity to decide whether we want to keep the city manager or go out and look for someone else. I have no problem with the city attorney or the city manager. I think they do a good job. I just wish that they wouldn't propose new taxes all the time, but then of course that's me. And we've got some very good employees. I don't want to, I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. I'm asking people to take a look at what are we doing as our city? How are we as citizens controlling our city? What are the things being proposed best? Because what we have proposed right now is coming from the city. It's coming from the council. And of course they have to get elected and those sort of things, but I'm not sure there was a whole lot of campaigning on that when we had our last election. So this is our opportunity to weigh in and say, is this what we want as a city? I'm saying it's probably not the best deal we can get, and I'd like to go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Chen?
Thank you. I'm going to take a little time to finish something that at $16 an hour, assure you, looking at all the pay, well, that the mayor and city council will still be the lowest paid in the entire city of Torrance. Just want to make sure you put things in perspective. There's no one that gets paid minimum wage in the city of Torrance. So, and the city manager issue was something that was going to be brought up back in November 2020, because that was a long issue where the process of removing the city manager was a very convoluted process. And so that was going to be one of the big things in the November 2020 charter amendment, should we have gone there. And a lot of people did not know that even though the city attorney was supposedly at will working at the pleasure of the mayor and council, was actually a civil service employee. So we had many public hearings, maybe some of you heard, and the decision by the council was to do what most of the city in the United States do now for city manager and city attorney for the type of government like our city, a city manager, city council relationship, was to have a contract. And it was incorrect that they will not have a new contract. Should the amendment pass, the city attorney and the city manager has a choice whether they want to stay as is or initiate a contract. So they will have the opportunity. They could opt in or opt out. So that's how that's going to be.
Okay, thank you. Next question. While Measure TC promises to not raise taxes, what is the monetary impact on the general fund? And we'll start with Mayor Chen.
Well, the monetary impact for the general fund, if you take 33K times 7, it's roughly $232,000 a year. So that's the impact. Compared to general fund, I did the math, it's 0.0008565 of the general fund. So if I multiply that by 100%, it's 0.086% of the general fund, assuming the general fund is $271,980. So it's very little. Just as the former finance director, Eric Sal, say, it's actually in the noise. And I want to repeat, it does not affect or risk the hire of any of our public safety employees with fire or the police. And there is no taxes that will be raised from this compensation change. So I think I answered your question. Thank you.
Mr. Marshall.
I agree with the mayor. There's not a fiscal impact of Measure TC right now. If it passes, of course, there'll be the council compensation. But there's other things that go on in Measure TC that can have a fiscal impact, and one of the ones we're concerned about is taking the airport fund out of the city charter. It was put there for a reason, and now it's out. I haven't, and maybe we can discuss it here tonight, but I have not seen a reason for why we're taking it out. If you read the old charter, the current charter, excuse me, it has provisions that are saying the revenue from the airport will be first spent on airport operations. That means runways and lights and so forth. We're in the middle. I sit on the airport commission. We're in the middle of some upgrades at the airport and so forth. We want to make sure those things are funded. It's been saying, hey, no problem. We'll treat it like any other fund, but I do know if you read carefully through the council agenda items, you'll notice that when we have to fund certain things, we pull some money from all these enterprise funds, the water department, we pull it from the airport, pull all these sort of things. And it makes it, from my perspective, having it in the charter makes it much harder to do that than it is now, even though it's done. I wish that there was the ability to, and I'm assuming that when they do that, these are surplus funds. We now have surplus funds with landing fees. So maybe those sort of things are happening there. That's one thing. Another thing is this city was chartered because we wanted to have our own school district. We wanted to pull out of the Los Angeles Unified School District. Now, I wasn't alive when that happened, so I guess we may be a little bit presumptive, but that's one of my concerns is what do we do with this? If Torrance Unified is cut loose, they can do anything they want. I think we need to keep control of it.
Okay, next question. How is the proposed charter amendment regarding campaign finance disclosure any different than what is being mandated right now? We'll start with Mr. Marshall.
I don't see any difference other than the fact that we're putting it in the charter. I've run for elective office in Torrance, and you have to comply with the Fair Political Practices Commission. You have to file campaign reports with our city clerk on the deadlines, which are set by the FPPC, and we have those things are available on the city website. This is one of the things where, I don't know, I guess we're codifying it in the charter, but I've always seen a charter more as a constitution than a list of ordinances. And sometimes from my perspective, we get the two mixed up. So from my perspective, there's no difference, and I don't see the need to do that. But I'll leave the mayor one more minute of my time to talk about it.
Okay, Mayor Chen.
Okay, I get 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Actually, that was incorrect again. If you were actually listening to the discussion on the charter amendment, I believe it was actually Councilman Gerson who brought up what he wants to add is what he called the independent expenditures. And the request was to have information that who is funding the independent expenditures, which is different. We don't have insight who funds independent expenditures. Yes, the 460 forms and who donates, we all have that information. So that's the key area, is the independent expenditures. And while I have a little time, I just want to share that there are, with respect to the comment about the airport funds, I'm going to leave this book here. This is our budget book that's this covered every year and publicly discussed. There are actually 5 enterprise funds: airport fund, sanitation fund, sewer fund, transit fund, water fund. Enterprise funds, by definition, for those of you who works in the finance world, in the private sector, we sometimes call it the color of money. If it's sanitation fund, let's say call that the purple money. Purple money cannot be spent on green color items, so it's fenced in. Sewer funds can only be spent on sewer funds. Transit funds for transit funds. So those are all fenced in, and they are always discussed. As a matter of fact, the deletion of the verbiage in the charter amendment actually came from our city staff. It did not come from any of the elected official, because they looked at it and they thought that was obsolete, it's not necessary. We still discuss these items. With respect to TUSD board, there's no risk. TUSD has consulted with their legal experts. There's no risk that TUSD will be absorbed by LAUSD.
Okay, next question. How does Measure TC affect Article 15 of the Airport Fund? We'll start with Mayor Chen.
I don't think you want me to spend 2 minutes and repeat the exact same thing, but it really has no effect in terms of the airport losing its fund. I think there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there that there's someone from the council that wants to close the airport and taking the funds away. As I shared earlier, it was one of the options that our city staff put up for us to discuss. It is no different than in the city charter amendment as reads today, that the city manager needs to be a resident of City of Torrance. That's not the case. Aram doesn't live in the City of Torrance. We cannot enforce it. So that's just an example of opportunity to update the city charter to be relevant for how we are actually operating. So as I shared earlier, the airport funds is an enterprise funds, and it's allocated, and it's protected. And these budgets are discussed every year. Every one of you have the opportunity to weigh in your comments when we approve the budget. So the airport fund is not going away with the deletion of the language inside the charter, in the same way that TUSD isn't at risk just because we removed the language of TUSD our charter. TUSD is fully protected on its own. They've been protected for many years. And as a matter of fact, we have TUSD board member who was actually prepared to sign on, but we already got enough signatures to support the charter amendment. So there's no risk with respect to TUSD as well. I know those were the two areas that were common at risk. There are no risks.
Okay, Mr. Marshall.
Yeah, let me respond to several things the mayor has said. First of all, I agree on the political contributions. I was at that council meeting where they did discuss independent expenditures. I'm not sure how critical that is a problem in the city of Torrance. Normally, our unions file things, and I have yet to see any sort of outside influence come in. I guess it can always come in, but I'm still of the opinion that we don't need to codify that in the charter. We could put it out. The council could make an ordinance and take it there. As for the airport fund, a lot of people think this is the first step once we get the fund out of the charter, because it was put there for a reason. I'm trying to figure out what that reason was, but it was put there. People thought it was important to do that. They didn't put the water fund, they didn't put the sanitation fund, they didn't put any of the other funds in there, but they put the airport fund in there. And we've had situations where I would consider the airport has been under attack. There was a request for a study, a land use study of the airport. I think the mayor mentioned that. And that tends to give the pilots down there concerns. There is the city's in a lawsuit over the landing fees. There's a lot going on at the airport. I hear that we may even have a restaurant down there. I'm looking forward to that coming before the airport commission and see what we're going to do there. I think it would be a great addition. Of course, I didn't want to give anything away. All of these sort of things going on are something we as a city need to figure out. I brought up some issues with Torrance Unified School District where I think we need to keep control of it, because I think it's important, and we do that with a charter. Our charter shows what we want to done in this city, and that's what we should have in our charter, not these other things that limit us. Thank you.
Okay, our last question. Besides council compensation and the issue with the employment of the city attorney and city manager, what other important issues are being resolved by the new city charter? And we'll start with Mr. Marshall.
Well, other city items being resolved, I don't know. They added a new section 303, which gives the council, and I approve the council having control over saying our elections are local elections and it's set by the council. What bothers me is it put in there that the city council may at its discretion determine the conduct of mail ballot elections, ranked choice voting, or instant runoff elections, and any other voting election method. I'm not sure that's something that the council should have control over. I think ranked choice voting, from my view, has been an absolute failure because it puts people in there that nobody voted for. Well, I shouldn't say nobody voted for, but there was not a majority of people who voted for, and I would not like to see that in there. There's other new sections in here, and by the way, I do like the nepotism section. I think that's good. I'm not sure about the ethics training. I think that tends to be a crutch where I think most people elected at city council are ethical. I think it's sometimes they get off beam, but we as citizens keep them apprised of that. So there's those kind of things that go into, and then I guess the last thing I have is the good government reforms. Call me a skeptic, but every time they put good government reforms into us, it ends up being more regulation and less free speech. And I'm of the opinion that we can disagree, as the mayor and I have done tonight, and you have to decide who's right and who's wrong. But we should have that right to free speech. Thank you.
Mayor Chen.
I just want to guarantee you that you do have free speech, so we have never taken that away. And so other items that were in here, and I'm just going to read off the impartial analysis. This way, if I forget something, you can always go to the city council, city clerk website, and read it yourself. As I shared earlier, one of the things that was removed in there was that the city manager needed to be a resident of the city of Torrance. That's an example. The good governance, there was a section where we had a seemingly loophole of how to remove an elected official. You all had the experience of our city treasurer a few years back. So we had to come up with a way to remove a elected official. But then we decided, why make it just for the city treasurer? So we made the language same for city treasurer, city clerk, city council, and mayor. So that is an example of more transparency and updating it. So it doesn't seem like we're just picking on one elected official. The same rules apply for all 9 of us. The minimum wage, that you already have that in there. Revolving door, we thought after one of us elected officials leaves the office, we don't want him or her to all of a sudden become a consultant to business XYZ. We just thought they need to remove themselves from lobbying when they're immediately out of office. We thought that was something like good governance. And in terms of election, if we decide to have ranked choice or independent voting, those items will be discussed and publicly deliberated. Thank you.
Thank you for answering all of our questions. We will now move on to closing statements, and we'll start with Mr. Marshall, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the North Torrance Homeowners Association and Marianne Hamada for this forum to be able to come and discuss something that's very important to our city. I trust the people that are here. I'm happy we have council members here. I'm happy we have former council members here. We have interested people, and I think it's you folks that make this city great and make it go. As I've said, our concern is that we think Measure TC does too much. There's some things we agree with. The at-will employees, the first city manager and city attorney. There's other things that are some good changes. One of the things that bothered us is, and I couldn't find it here, and I don't know what happened to it, but I would have liked to have seen some of the things of our council have advice and consent on when the city manager hires some department heads, maybe not all of them, but certainly the fire chief and the police chief. We got in trouble here a few years ago because we brought in a police chief that ended up retiring in Torrance, and we got a chance to pay her pension and not Manhattan Beach, where she spent most of her service. I encourage you to go through those and read because the city did put out a revision in one of those items. I believe it's 9E and in July the 2nd. And it does talk about how things have changed. And I encourage you to take a look at the red line that's farther on in that package, because it shows you exactly what has changed. And there's been a lot of changes in the city manager area, and I think that's fine. I would like to see, I guess I'll take a little bit from the manager, that the city attorney and the city manager aren't required, if Measure TC passes, they're not required to become at-will employees. They have the option. I agree with that, but they're not required. And so that's why I said that it would be the next one. You've got a big decision ahead of you. There are major changes that have gone through, and you need to be aware of them. We didn't really get a chance to discuss too many of them tonight because we spent a lot of time on council compensation. And I don't consider that big issue. I consider some of the other things I brought up tonight much bigger issues that have a more long-range impact for us. And when we're making charter changes, we got to look down the road. We may not always have this council, well, we won't always have this council, and things can change, and we need to make sure that when they do, that we're not damaged by that change. Thank you.
Mayor Chen.
Thank you once again, North Torrance Homeowners Association. I see that we have members from Southwood Homeowners Association here, and thank you for coming. And, you know, I don't have a canned opening statement, and I don't have a canned closing statement. I read what's publicly available. A closing statement, I'm going to read the mailers. But before I do that, All the packages are here for anyone who wants to review the budget book. All of our council meeting staff reports are here. And if you want to talk about things that you're confused, please feel free to contact me, and we can schedule an appointment, can go over it so that you will understand. Over the past year, the City of Torrance has conducted 4 public meetings to discuss potential changes to city charter. On July 16th, the Torrance City Council voted to place a Measure TC on the November 5th, 2024 ballot for local voters to consider proposed amendments to the city charter. If the measure is approved by a majority of the voters, the charter will be updated as proposed. If the measure is rejected by the majority of voters, the charter will remain in its current form. Over the past year, the Torrance has conducted 4 public meetings to discuss potential changes to the city charter. On July 16th, the Torrance City Council voted to place the measure called Measure TC on the November 5th ballot. Below is a summary: requiring all lobbyists to register with the city, requiring ethics training for city council officials, updating elected officials' description to be independent of gender, confirming the local control of city elections, strengthening requirements for audits of city finances and accounts, strengthening requirements for public disclosure and transparency related to city budget and all public funds, streamlining the appointment process of city boards, commissioners, and committees, increasing disclosure requirements for campaign donations of candidates for city offices, strengthening anti-nepotism rules to prohibit council members and city officers from appointing a relative to a salary position, modernizing approved methods of official city communications, restricting compensation for members of the city council to no more than the minimum wage of the state of California, which is currently at $16 an hour, expanding the circumstances under which a city council or other elected offices may be removed, including criminal activity and lack of meeting attendance. Measure TC will not increase taxes. Measure TC will not impact the operation of Torrance Municipal Airport or Torrance Unified School District. Measure TC will appear on the November 5th ballot. You have a choice. If you have more questions, I'm available anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marianne?
Thank you, Mayor Chen and Mr. Rick Marshall. We appreciate your time and bringing out this informed information to the city here. And we're also going to be posting it on our Facebook and I believe our YouTube channel as well. First, I want to thank, before we close, I want to thank Mr. Dick Amamiya for bringing the coffee this evening, and Bob and Terry for the refreshments as well. But I also like to thank Mike Lewis. He has decided to step down as our board member, so he has been really impactful to our board. He has great feedback for us as we are putting these forums on, as you might say. He put together the newsletter, like, without a doubt, in a quick, efficient manner, and it's beautiful, as you guys might all know. So I'm really going to miss you, Mike. I know you're with our arm's reach, so thank you for everything that you've done for us. We really appreciate it. So with that being said, we're also looking for board members. If anybody's interested, we need somebody to do the newsletter. So, yep, thank you. And with that being said, I want to thank everybody from coming from far and wide here in the North End. And David Carsonis and Mia, thank you very much for volunteering to film us and put this on the website for everybody and for all of Torrance to see this. Thank you. And with that, thank you everyone and have a good night and a safe drive home.
I would like to adjourn this meeting in memory of Francis Romero. Thank you.
Thank you.